I want to tell you, I saw Dr. Limor Goren on a podcast a few weeks back, and I was fascinated by her story. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Goren. She's the founder of a company called Kyoord, Kyoord, and she's a cancer researcher with a PhD in molecular biology. Her research centers on one of the most important anti-inflammatory molecules found in medicinal olive oil, and it's called oleocanthal. Dr. Goran discovered one of the mechanisms by which oleocanthal is toxic to cancer and showed that olive oils that are rich in oleocanthal are an effective strategy to kill various types of cancer cells. So she started a company called Kyoord after she received so many requests from friends and family, of course, for this medicinal olive oil that she used in her research. And she realized it's not very accessible here in the US. So she has made it so. She searched the world for the best high-phenolic olive oil and ultimately came across a small family farm in Corfu, Greece, which had just won an award for having the highest concentration of oleocanthal ever discovered at that time. And this is how the company Kyoord was born. And Dr. Goran is really on a mission to advocate for the health benefits of olive oil. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining our little group.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Just like you said towards the end of your introduction, which was lovely. Thank you. I am really on a mission to advocate and educate as to the benefit of, making small changes in our nutrition that make a really big effect on health. And I just love that you're starting a sugar-free challenge or sugar-free few weeks. I mean, it's a struggle for me too. I know the science behind it. I know how harmful sugar is to our body. I know how much the body operates in much better harmony when the main source of calories come from fat, healthy fat, and not from sugar. But just like the rest of you, I love sugar. It's hard not to. So yes. It's a challenge, but if you want to live a healthy lifestyle, you have to make some tough decisions.
And we have talked about the different ways that the body can metabolize carbs, but also the fats. And definitely we have gone carb heavy to an extreme in the culture, and it's so good to bring it back.
Right.
And I was thinking you've got to be people who are on ketogenic diets have got to absolutely know about your product. So they would love it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I would say they're the early adopters. A lot of people that have a ketogenic lifestyle are really seeking, because then you really start to look into the nutritional value and everything you put into your body, because also not all fats are created equal. I think in the old days, a lot of people thought, oh, ketogenic diet, let me eat steak with butter every day. No, that make me healthy. But as we know, that's not really the case. Like which sources of fat really do matter. And I think that's how people find out about olive oil as being one of the healthier fats. And then there's new awareness, which is emerging, which I'm trying to do my little part in educating, that also not all olive oils are the same. There are some olive oils that are healthier than others, and that's not because of the fat they contain. The fat is pretty much the same in every extra virgin olive oil. You have pretty much the same percentage of oleic acid, which is a very healthy fat, but it's the other thing that are in very, very small amounts in some olive oils that makes some healthier than others. Olive oils are around 99.9% fat and 0.1% other things. But that's where the secret is. And the other things are the things that are really beneficial for our body. It's a collection of many, many different and very varied molecules that have strong biological activities. A lot of them are known and well studied. Some of them are still being discovered. And some of them, maybe you've heard about squalene, that's in that family, and some are polyphenols. Polyphenols are a very large group of biologically active molecules that are found throughout nature, in fruits like blueberries and other, like even cacao has polyphenols. And olive oil is just one source of polyphenols. But just like any other organism in nature, olive oil has some olives have some very unique polyphenols that do not exist in other things in nature. And these have been extensively studied, and they're really healthy for us, they're really good for us. So mostly they're antioxidants, they're very strong antioxidants. And then there is one polyphenol that is a very strong anti-inflammatory, and this is the one you referred to. It's called oleocanthal, and that's what my research centers on. I'm very interested in oleocanthal, both as an anti-inflammatory molecule, but apparently it has other biological activities that are very important for health in other domains. So first, oleocanthal is known to be a pretty potent neuroprotective. There have been studies on both Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. Those studies are done on animals that show that oleocanthal is able to improve brain function in these type of conditions. And the mechanisms are varied depending on what it is. Some have to do with the anti-inflammatory activity, but some do not. It has to do with its ability to clear proteins, for example, like tau proteins that you might have heard about. The other category of disease and health that oleocanthal has a strong involvement in is cancer. And that was my area of research. And in my lab, I found one of the mechanisms by which oleocanthal is toxic to cancer cells without being very toxic to non-cancer cells. And that's through a really interesting mechanism called, it's going to be a mouthful, bear with me, lysosomal membrane permeabilization. And what it means is all of our cells in our body have little organelles called lysosomes. If you still remember anything from your basic biology class, sometimes they're referred to as recycling centers of the cells. That's where macromolecules are being degraded, broken into small components so the cells can use them. And what happens is that oleocanthal pokes holes in those lysosomes. Now, that by itself doesn't sound like a great thing. We need lysosomes to survive. Every cell needs lysosomes, but apparently cancer cells are much more reliant on lysosomes than non-cancerous cells. They have extra demand for the byproduct that the lysosomes create and other lysosomal processes. So an agent that is somewhat degrading the lysosomes, it's not like a total catastrophe, it just reduces their activity by a little bit, is way more toxic to cancer cells than non-cancer cells. And we believe that that's the reason why oleocanthal is so potent in killing cancer cells in a lab, and also has been shown to be protective really in humans.
I would love to show your website if that's okay.
Sure.
So we can look at some of your products.
So a few years back, when I was doing my research and showed us really promising results on oleocanthal and already published some results, we worked with isolated compound. We worked with oleocanthal that was isolated from olive oils. I received an email from two brothers in Greece, in Corfu, that wrote to me and told me that, well, you know, our olive oil just won an award for having the most oleocanthal in the world. Would you like a bottle for your research? And I said, like, geez, okay, sure. I mean, you know, I'm a serious scientist. I'm not dealing with like food with olive oil. I mean, I'm really interested in the molecule and the mechanism, but sure, send me a bottle. So they sent me a bottle, and we gave it a try. It tasted, it was very, very spicy almost, right? Stings, the back of the throat, made us cough. You probably know about it, Catherine, if you tried it. Mm-hmm. But I was like, okay, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to use it in my research or help these people? And I just thought, okay, well, let me try to, I had some plates of cancer cells. Let me try to treat the cancer cells with this olive oil. So I came up with a method to deliver that to the cancer cells, which is not trivial. But I did, and I pretty much pipetted the right mixture of oil and other salts that I needed onto the cancer cells. And I went home to my kids. I came back to the lab next morning and all the cancer cells were dead. So at that point, I was thinking to myself, okay, all right, that's really cool. That's really encouraging. But, like, what if like you put, I don't know, vinegar on the olive oil in the dye or something else? But I went down to the supermarket and I just purchased a bottle of olive oil, like the first one that came to my hand, and that said extra virgin olive oil, cold press. So like I knew I'm choosing something that's decent. And I poured it on the same cancer cells, and I came back the next morning and none of them were dead. They're all alive and happy and thriving. So then I knew there's something about this particular olive oil that makes it special. And I had my guess what it was, because it was not by mistake that it ended up on my lab bench. So then I started a big chase, and I collected olive oils from all over the world. And I tried to check their ability to kill cancer cells. And some were better than others, some did nothing. There was really only a couple others that got close to the governor. They're all from around the Mediterranean. One was from Cyprus, one was from southern Italy. And then I sent all the olive oils to a lab, to an independent lab, to measure how much oleocanthal each one of them has. And lo and behold, it was a perfect linear correlation. The olive oils with more oleocanthal were the ones that I found to be toxic to the cells. The one with, good amount but less, they were less toxic. And the ones that had very little, an average or less than average amount, didn't do anything. So that's when we knew we have something.
So it's so fascinating. And we've known this is heart healthy for so many years, but to take it to this other level. And I want to talk just a minute about that sting in the throat, because when I saw you on that podcast and you mentioned that made me so curious. So I've got to have all these bottles right here next to me. I went into my cabinet and I was trying my olive oils and I couldn't understand what you were talking about. I was not feeling that sting. So when I ordered yours, I was so excited to get it. And when I got it, I knew immediately what you were talking about. The taste is better and different than any olive oil I have in the house and that I've ever had. And I had been on a hunt for good olive oils and bought directly from Greece, but really this is that unique, I have to say.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Well, I think most people really do appreciate it and like the flavor. Some people actually don't like it. They find it too offensive. They've never tasted anything like that. And that's kind of like, but that's what's good for you. Polyphenols are bitter naturally. So they give the olive oil this like really complex, bitter kind of adult taste to it in the front of the palate. But oleocanthal is the one that stings the back of the throat. Now, every extra virgin olive oil, if you go to a mill, it doesn't matter if it's a small family mill or a huge commercial mill, like if they're making extra virgin olive oil, when it comes off the press, I want to say hot off the press, but it should be cold off the press, because it should be milled in, without elevated temperatures, has some oleocanthal level in it. It depends on a variety of the trees, some more, some others. So if you tasted any fresh olive oil, it should always have a little bit of that stinging sensation. The problem is that by the time it gets to the consumer, by the time first, they store it over there and then they collect it, and there's consolidators that buy it in bulk, and olive oil that you buy as Italian olive oil might have actually come from Greece or Croatia or Morocco, and it just traveled through Italy, so it's suddenly Italian olive oil. By the time it gets to the supermarket and sits on the shelf, it loses all of that. It really gets oxidized. So it's hard to appreciate it. And then some others, there's some excellent olive oils from small family farms, and they're healthy and they're good and they're high in polyphenols. But because of the genetics of the tree, it doesn't make a lot of oleocanthal. So that's when I experimented some of the olive oils that I thought, oh, they're the most expensive and fancy and nice looking. I thought, oh, this would definitely be, kill the cancer cells. They didn't, just because they don't have high oleocanthal, and it's not because the producer didn't make it properly, it's just because of the variety of the olive.
So it might be very heart healthy, good for the brain,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
would be lacking in some.
Correct.
So another thing you said that I found very interesting was about cooking. So I think it's a bit of a myth that we should not cook with olive oil. Can you address that?
Not only you can, you should, and I'll tell you why. So when you heat any kind of oil, you change it chemically, right? And fatty acids and triglycerides in the oil would oxidize, and they would create byproducts that are actually not healthy. They're sometimes referred to as toxic aldehyde, and that's true about every cooking oil. There's a myth that the smoke point has something to do with it if you see smoke, but that's really not true. That has to do with the water content in the oil. Some oils have more water, some oils have less water. But what studies found is that actually olive oil, because of the polyphenols, because of those antioxidants, they protect the fatty acids from oxidation for a longer time. It would not be forever. So it really has to do with like how much you cook and what temperature. If you put olive oil in a pan and put it on high and just like try to burn it, like, after half an hour, 40 minutes, you would really be left with nothing that's very valuable nutritionally. But for everyday cooking, sauteing, baking, quick frying, like frying an egg, it's not enough time to oxidize all the fatty acids. And again, the antioxidants protect them from oxidation. So as a result, the food that you make is actually more nutritionally dense. It has less of the toxic aldehydes. And actually some of the polyphenols, depending on the food you cook, mainly it's been shown with vegetables, transfer into the vegetables. So the vegetables gain nutritional value.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard this. This is great. So it sounds like you were on a search for olive oils all over. So I have a question for the people who especially like to buy USA made. So California, we know olive oils are made there. What's your finding?
So I'm not a big expert on that, but in my research, I really try to find something that's more affordable, more available. And I definitely checked a lot of California olive oils. So I would say the good California olive oils were in that category of the middle. I could definitely see an effect on a cancer cell. So that means, and also the measure to have, like a nice, like slightly above average levels of oleocanthal and other good polyphenols. They're not the top. And again, I suspect, or at this point, I know it really has nothing to do with them doing anything wrong. It has to do with the varieties of the tree. So there are actually some California olive oils that are really, really high phenolic, but those tend to be low in oleocanthal. I'm always looking for oils that have both high polyphenols, but one of the most important one is oleocanthal. They need to have high oleocanthal. So the California olive oils have like average or average plus levels of oleocanthal, which is great. It's great for everyday cooking. There's no reason not to use them. It's a great product. I mean, again, if you're looking to use something a little more medicinally, that might not be the right choice. But for everyday cooking, if you get something that the harvest date, you need to make sure you're not getting an oil that's more, by the time you purchase it, it should not be more than a year and a half old, maybe like 20 months, because really after about 2 years, the quality degrades, and more than that, the oil can get rancid. Also, you're not sure how it was stored. But if you purchase a product that actually tells you when it was harvested, that's really a good sign, because most producers don't want to do it because it really takes that time to work with the big supermarket chains and bring it to market. And by the time they really start selling their harvest, it's probably already like 8 or 9 months old. So, sometimes they'd rather not tell you when it was harvested. They just stick a best buy date or expiration date. They put, 3-4 years, because, the oil is going to be okay. Most people don't really know what rancid olive oil tastes like.
Or
but
maybe
it wouldn't
that's
have the
all we
same
know.
nutritional value. So that's the advice I would give you. You can definitely find California olive oils that have the harvest date on it. So that would be a pretty good choice. If you find a harvest date, the latest harvest in California is taking place right now. olive oils that were early harvest, which are better, were harvested in November and December. So they should be starting to come into the market very soon. If you're looking probably right now, olive oils, you would find a store even that they have a harvest date. It would say something like November, December 2021 or January 2022. It's still okay to buy them if you're going to consume them within, like a couple of months. But probably in a month or two, you'll start seeing in the stores the newer harvest, and that's the time to purchase this newer harvest. And I would say after like March or April, do not purchase any olive oil that the harvest date is from 2021.
Okay, good to know. So looking back at your products again now, you've got the one that says high-phenolic, but they really all are.
They all are high-phenolic. The Governor are the ones with the absolute highest polyphenols. The white bottle, the limited edition, has the highest. It changes from year to year. If you click on the product page, we put a certificate of analysis by an independent lab. So this year, I believe the limited had a little over 1,400, maybe 1,500 milligrams of polyphenols. So this is the highest we make. I'll scroll up. It's on the page. Oh, it's here too. Yeah, it's here too. 1478. And oleocanthal and oleasin. Oleasin is similar to oleocanthal. It's more of an antioxidant. So it has over a gram, over 1,000 milligrams. That's really, really, really high. The Governor Premium, it's a little softer in taste. Some people prefer it for taste. Has slightly less, probably 10-15% less. And the Kyoord high-phenolic olive oil, we're trying to make it as our most affordable product. And please excuse me that I'm calling a bottle of olive oil that's $50 affordable, but in the world of high-phenolic olive oil, it is. So this one has almost 1,000, I think 900 and something polyphenols. So this one, it's slightly lesser priced than the Governor, so it's more suitable for everyday cooking. It's also, as far as flavor, I think it's the most crowd-pleasing flavor.
I also love that you have this blog and so much information to learn from here. This is wonderful. I want to make sure everybody in the group knows that when you visit the site, take a look at some of these blog posts because it's great. So, okay, I'm going to stop that share.
Education is a big piece of that.
Yeah. So here is a question I wanted you to talk about. I think many of us think since olive oil is healthy, that olives are healthy also. But I heard you talk about that. So could you?
Well, so, olives are a fruit, vegetable. It's definitely healthy, to eat them, but it's not as healthy as olive oil. It also lacks some of the things that make olive oil very special. Olives have some polyphenols in it, but I don't know, we call them the non-mature polyphenols, because what happens, for example, oleocanthal or oleasin, they don't exist in olives. They happen during the process of olive oil making. It's a process called malaxation. After you crush the olives, you let them almost brew in a tank, and there's enzymatic activities that happen that create those really biologically active mature polyphenols that have biological activities. Olives themselves have some polyphenols, but it's just not the same. Also, when you eat an olive, it's brined, right? It's pickled, so it's not like a fresh fruit anymore. It's not like a fresh fruit or vegetable, whereas olive oil is a fresh juice. It's not, there's nothing, you don't salt it, you don't, change it, you don't ferment it, you don't do anything to it. It's a fresh fruit juice. So I always prefer that. Yeah. But, if you have to choose between an olive and a potato chip, potato chip is also a vegetable, right? I would choose the olive.
Definitely. Okay, so I also have a question about infusing olive oil, because we know we have these bulk olive oil stores, and I think they meet the requirements for having some very good high quality oils.
Right.
But I wonder what happens then if it's infused with something.
Sure,
We
sure.
happen
So
to have
actually,
a bottle that's infused with Tuscan herb.
So it's interesting. We're actually going to have a blog article about that exact subject. I think it's coming out in March. So there's actually two processes to infuse olive oil, and by far the most popular, and that's what most infused olive oil you find in the market, is the infusion is done via heating the olive oil. So my opinion about that is like, absolutely, it has zero nutritional benefit. It's just like refining olive oil. It's not extra virgin olive oil. In fact, most infused olive oils in the world, especially in Europe, where they do have regulations about it and they enforce them, unlike in the US, are not allowed to call it extra virgin. It cannot be extra virgin because it was heated. It's flavored olive oil. I mean, it came from olives, presumably. So these I'm really against. You can get some infused olive oil. I don't know if infused is the right word, but flavored olive oil that are done in a slightly different process, where the aromatics are milled together with the olives. So they're not heating the olive oil, the finished product. I know they do it sometimes with lemons. It has to be in a growing region where there's like lemons and olives growing in the same climate, in the same, and they're ripe in the same season. So if they mill the olive or the olive pulp, the lemon with the olives, that product is already better. Or any kind of infusion with herbs where they simply, they might sell you a bottle and there's a sprig of rosemary inside. That's not a bad idea as far as I know. I'm finishing my research for the blog post soon. I did not find any reason not to trust that product, except I haven't tested the polyphenol amount or concentration in infused olive oil. So I don't know if there's any interaction between, again, let's say rosemary or garlic and the olive and the polyphenols. There could be, but I don't think there should be. So I think that's fine. But
So
with anything else, I would just like infuse it myself in a bottle. Take a clove of garlic, cut it, throw it in your bottle, close it, and like probably a day or two later, it's going to smell like garlic already.
So how much olive oil would you say would you recommend for regular folks or people who are really trying to take it medicinally?
Yeah. Well, so let's look just for a second at the big picture. I think each one of us has a slightly different caloric intake need, and we're trying to maintain a diet that has, a certain number of calories, either to maintain weight, maintain health, consume enough if you're a very active person, if you're doing sports, or maybe you are struggling with weight and you want to stay on a certain calorie diet. I believe that the major source of calories we consume should be calories from fat. And that's based on published research. And then secondary should be from protein, and third should be from carbohydrates. So the answer also has to do with how many calories you can afford to spend on olive oil, because it is fat. Fat has the most calories per gram. So 1 gram of fat has more calories than 1 gram of carbohydrates or proteins. And I would say for most of us, we probably consume the equivalent of something like 2 or 3 tablespoons of various fats a day anyway. What I try to do is that, 80% of that comes from olive oil. So I really try to consume most of my fat calories from olive oil. Of course, you eat out in restaurants. Sometimes you buy hummus or something, and it's not, you'll have some other calories. It's hard to avoid other sources of fat, but that's what I try. And I would say, especially if you want to try to use high-phenolic olive oil a little more medicinally for wellness, you should really try to have at least a spoon a day of high-phenolic olive oil just for general health benefits. Again, for example, our Kyoord olive oil, which is our lowest phenolic, has about 5 times the average. So having 1 spoon of that is the same benefit of having 5 spoons of any kind of supermarket olive oil. That's good, not the bad ones. Or the Governor has about 8 times. So really, just by taking 1 tablespoon a day, it's like, most studies about consumption of olive oil show significant health benefits, on heart health, on cancer, on overall mortality, just by introducing about 2 tablespoons of olive oil a day. So if you take half of it, but it's high-phenolic, you did more than enough.
It's a beautiful bottle.
Thank
So
you.
it's very nice to just keep there on my kitchen counter. It looks beautiful. I'm not so worried because it's not in direct light and because the bottle is
That's why we make those bottles opaque.
Yeah. Right. So as long as it's there, it's reminding me, and I've been having often 2 or 3 spoonfuls a day. It's kind of
I know if I feel
it.
under the weather, I definitely up my intake.